Have you ever wondered if knowing the full details of a sexual betrayal could help or hinder your healing? Many partners wrestle with this question, and that's why today we're talking about full disclosures. A full disclosure is the process of uncovering the truth behind the betrayal you've experienced. But what does a full disclosure really entail? Who should consider it? And how can understanding these details guide your path to healing? In this two-part series, I'm going to bravely ask the questions you need answered to realize if a full disclosure is right for you. I'm your host, Monifa Ellis-Addie, and on this episode of Hope and Healing Chats, Dan Drake and Janice Caudill, authors of the Full Disclosure series and founders of the Kitsugi Recovery Partners, will join me as we weigh on the risks and rewards to help you decide if a full disclosure is right for you. But before we get started, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell to stay updated. Thank you two for being here today. So your guide has become the guide when it comes to how to do a full disclosure that everyone is using. So most of our users, most of our listeners do know what a full therapeutic disclosure is, but for those that don't, can we briefly describe it in a couple of sentences? What's a full therapeutic disclosure?
It's the truth.
One word.
It's if I'm the partner, it's the things that I didn't know about that have affected me, and that have are the pathway for me being able to figure out me, like what's happened, what the betrayals were. Now I can make some decisions based on informed knowledge.
Now, if I'm the sex addict and I hear that, I'm like, ooh, why do I need to tell them all of that? It's just going to make things worse. Besides, they know everything already. What would you say to them?
That's a good, we hear that a lot. So that's why you're saying that, Monifa. Yeah. And there's two parts of that. I think that's really important. The first, I hear some version, and sometimes people throw 12-step language in there. If I share this, it's going to harm my partner. So it's going to make things worse. It's going to harm them. Why would I do something that would intentionally hurt or harm my partner? To speak to that, we don't want to harm somebody. And we know disclosures are difficult. They're painful. They can be traumatic. We also know the partner needs information. The partner is often feeling free falling. Like they don't know what they don't know. How do you move forward? It's like you have a clear diagnosis of something, but you don't know, we know there's a problem, but we don't know the clarity of the diagnosis and how to treat it. So this to me gets to the bottom of it all, helps really get some clarity for the partner, helps build a new foundation where they can heal and restore and hopefully build for the relationship. So it's usually when we hear the addict saying that, I don't know what you'd say, Janice and Monifa, it's usually that they'll kind of say, oh, I don't want to harm my partner, but usually it's more about themselves. It's too scary. It's too overwhelming. They're more self-protective than partner protective. That's usually what I found.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Exactly. And I also think there's some people who genuinely think I'm doing the right thing. But what they don't take into effect is that they're controlling the flow of information. They're taking my choice away with that, which is kind of at a higher level what's happened in the addiction. Most partners would not respond to an ad that says, hey, I'm going to lie to you for years about big things and little things. I'm going to betray you. I'm going to leave you confused and gaslit and brain fogged, like with that. But there's another piece that I'm going to guess you also say, Dan. I say it to recovering addicts. They don't believe me until maybe afterward. But the reality is that truth is not just healing for the partner and the relationship. Like the addict can't be in real recovery if they haven't been willing to look at their own truth.
Yeah, absolutely. But now on the subject of truth, because then with truth comes details. So if I am a betrayed partner and I'm like, but I want all the details, I want to know everything because I find comfort in the details. Or is there a certain version of the truth that you put out that doesn't necessarily go into details that could be potentially damaging, or are the details empowering? Like are there things that are off limits? Like what does this look like?
Well, that's a really big part of the partner recovery and healing. And I know that couples come into this process just wanting to rapidly get to the truth, but you can have a rapid surgery with no anesthesia and no sterilized instruments as well.
Not gonna feel too
Um,
good.
yes, you want to get the truth, and you want to not be destroyed by it. With that, you want to be
Mhm.
prepared for it. So a lot of time and attention is taken in the partner's work. So it's helping them discern what level of truth. Like, what do I need to know? Where's the line between what I really need to know and what I maybe want to know? And make some really conscious choices about that, because detail is in the eyes of the beholder.
Mm.
And if I'm working with Dan, if we're working on a disclosure, I don't want to say to Dan she wants a lot of detail. She wants all the details, because I maybe have an idea of what that means in my mind, and he may have a totally different. So there's going to be a lot of work with her to really discern that. And if you want like absolutely everything, it's um, where's that need coming from? What's that need really about? Is it about I'm comparing myself? I want all the details about everything. That's maybe a different um, issue to look at than is it about like my intuition's just been going off right and left, and I don't know if I don't even know if it's intuition, or so I need to ask about some really small things that he may not get, his therapist, his guide may not get. But for me, that's my way of beginning to track and seek and find my own and restore my intuition.
But
Just to add to that, if that's okay, Janice, like
Mhm.
I completely agree too. I think there's this one piece that one reason these workbooks, we never intended them to be as big as they got, but that's part of the process is, okay, I want all the detail. Well, what does that mean? I think what Janice is saying to slow it down. And I have some colleagues who would have some hard and fast rules. We don't share this level of detail, or we don't say this thing. For example, um, let's say we don't say specific if the person was acting out in a hotel. We don't say the specific hotel name or something, or the brand or the chain or something, because is that a level of detail that's important? I can think of a story, though. This is where it's complicated. I think of a story where someone went through a disclosure and they were told, no specific details like that in the disclosure. So they were withheld that. But then they came to me and said, I want to know this level of detail because there's a special hotel that I want to know, is this a place where you acted out? Is this a safe place where I can reclaim this place for myself and know that it didn't happen here? Or also, I think this partner suspected there may have been some, was the concierge, or was there someone that was involved in procuring prostitutes at this place? So I just, when she said that, I thought that makes a lot of sense, because
Yeah.
you want to know, is this place something that was tainted, or can we keep this as special? Okay, that level of detail made sense to me. She
Mhm.
wanted to know something very specific. So that's different than if we just have a hard and fast rule about level of detail, because sometimes partners they have a really good reason why they want to know certain things. But that's part of the vetting of it, I think, with
Yeah.
their guide, to understand this is what they're wanting. And sometimes if they're wanting, I think Janice said this, sometimes I want to know specific questions, but maybe there's a question underneath that question. It might be a heart-based question. It might not be facts that I'm trying to get to. It's something else entirely that's going to take more time. It might be grief. It might be something else that they're wanting to know.
Well, and I'll say, kind of using your example, Dan, one of the things that we created was a needs assessment for really very specific, detailed kind of checklists and some questions to sort of distill what that's about, for partners to use, so that whoever's guiding the recovering addict, the disclosure with that, they're not taking a guess. They The blueprints are coming from the partner, and literally one of the questions around detail is, would you want to know that he acted out in Chicago versus he acted out on a business trip in Chicago versus he acted out in a hotel on a business trip in Chicago versus he acted out at the Hotel Chicago on a business trip to Chicago? So we give kind of some things that really help the partners discern what their needs really are.
which is great for on the guide side, because then when we're looking at the needs assessment, it's like, okay, is this a want to know or need to know? Because sometimes it might be on the needs assessment, but it still might be a want to know and it's not actually connected to a need. Or the more we have the conversation, like in the example Dan gave, there's actually a need connected to it. So I love the needs assessment, because it just gives us one universal language when we are working with another guide, and also communicating with the partner and the addict of what exactly how we're structuring this document. But are there any areas that you would advise against or that are off limits or tricky areas?
I generally advise against something that's at the level it gives a script, and now there's an image going off in my head.
Mhm.
Because that's an image that's quite likely going to replay over and over in my head. Even whatever I find out about the truth is, if I ask those questions, um, is that like, what is the real need? And is there something, I think one of the things, Dan, you added to the needs assessment was, I think the phrase, there's no bleach for the brain.
Mm.
Can you live with that? What's the impact going to be on that? Sometimes, as Dan said, there are heart-based questions. That's really what it's about. I like the fact that we distill the questions, because if that's what it's really about, it's about a love kind of issue. Once we get the facts, then that's not where we necessarily stop. There can be additional kind of process where we can begin to add the context. But it's really difficult for a brain to absorb a lot of context before it even knows what the basic fact is.
By the way, I think that was Dort Reichenthal's phrase, but I've definitely
Okay.
adopted it. Not as my
Okay.
own, but I just want to give her credit.
Dora has a
It
lot of good
sounds like
phrases.
Dora.
It
Yeah.
does sound like Dort.
So now what if the sex addict is still like, I'm not doing it? Like they continuously just refuse to do this disclosure because you're saying all these great things, but it's like, I don't believe you. So I'm not doing it. Where does this leave the partner?
Well, can I say on the addict side first? And then
Yeah.
if you want to, Janice.
Yeah.
First of all, and I want to answer what you said before, because we do get this before. You said, well, she already knows everything. My partner already knows everything. So
Mhm.
why go through all this? They know everything. I want to be clear. I can think of one. There might be, it's less than a handful of disclosures I've ever done where there's not been any new information. I can think of one. And but they were waiting years and years to get to disclosure. So it wasn't new. In every situation I can think of, even if it's not, huge brand new pieces of information, there's always nuances of it. Or also it's this, we're advocating for a written document, so that the addict is writing a whole document that they're sharing to their partner all at once. That's not what they did usually they share pieces of information. There's staggered disclosures where it was dragged out over, days, weeks, sometimes months or years. And this is all done with the addict sharing full accountability all at once. So it's a lot. And there is going to be new information. On the addict side, I will always say, I get that it's scary. I get that this goes against almost everything that the addict learned how to cope with in life. Usually they learn, have negative core beliefs on some level. I'm bad, I'm defective, I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy. Those core beliefs keep, I want to keep everything hidden, because if people really knew all of me, including the dark stuff I don't want anyone to know about, there's no way anyone would stay, especially my partner who I've betrayed and hurt the most. So I recognize that saying, no, if you share this, it's actually going to heal and restore your relationship and help them heal. I get that wouldn't make any sense for most addicts, but that's what we see happening. That's what the partner needs, because otherwise we're basically trying to stitch up a infected wound that's never going to heal on its own. This is a way that we have to clean out that wound so that we can actually help heal. If they're refusing though, not good. It's not a good sign. It really doesn't go well for a relationship, because essentially for anyone listening that is an addict, if you are refusing and your partner saying, this is what I need to heal, it effectively communicates to your partner, I'm more concerned with my own safety and my own, walls of protection than I am concerned with our relationship and what you need.
Yeah.
That's what communicates to the partner. And that doesn't bode well long term, because the partner will not really build safety. There's no real trust or honesty rebuilt. It's just those relationships end up pretty floundering. They don't go so well.
Yeah. It's kind of like telling the partner who feels like she's still bleeding, and truth is what will stop the bleeding. And the message is essentially, I'm just going to watch you bleed out,
Hmm.
while saying I'm doing it, maybe saying I'm doing it for you with that. But On the partner side, probably 9 times out of 10 in this situation, the partner and her disclosure guide may be, into it, that this is going to be dicey to whether he follows through. Okay. So that gets built into the preparation. And right from the get-go, we're discerning the difference between content truth, which is, can he actually share the real facts fully and completely in the disclosure? And that's what everybody's really, really focused on. But we have to remember that behavioral truth can be quite different. And it's usually more important. I've seen a lot of partners who probably get, for the most part, the truth in the disclosures. But if it's done with somebody's sending kind of veiled abandonment threats, or defensive, or passive aggressive, or just really mean in the days and weeks up to the disclosure, the behavioral truth is saying, well, he may be sober, maybe, but he's not really growing. He's not really maturing. And this information, this is who you're married to as of right now. This is who you're with in a relationship with. And that's a super important truth for partners to take in, because you can sort of get distracted, like if you're trying to find which shell has the ball under it. You can get really, really distracted if you focus on only content truth. And sometimes when you look at the behavior, it's like, is this wise for me? Does this feel like love? This is the truth of where he or she's at right now.
Which I see all the time, because content is checking off the boxes. It's tangible.
Yeah.
Like they can see that right in front of their face. Whereas if we're talking about process and behavioral, that's more of the heart stuff, like what's really affecting me. And sometimes there's it can feel safer, like for the nervous system, to just be looking at content. Like, well, at least they're checking off all the boxes, so they're in recovery. Whereas if I'm looking at the process and behavioral stuff, I might have to deal with some truths that I might not be ready to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was wondering if you two can speak to, there's some research in the book where you talk about the emotional impact of discovery versus disclosure research and like the benefits. I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit about that to make this a little more tangible if we're talking about like why do a full therapeutic disclosure.
So the research on the discovery is actually the original research for the APSATS community. And I haven't looked at the numbers really recently, so I'm going to pull them out of air. And but
it'll be probably pretty good, I assume. It hasn't changed dramatically, right?
They'll be probably pretty good, because surprisingly, that survey's been up for a really, really long time. And I would have thought that over the years, it would have started to change, the sort of our knowledge in our community and the awareness is changing. It really hasn't changed much. I think on a 10-point scale, the subjective emotional pain of discovery it is about 9.6, that's an extremely high score, right? I always like to point out that if that were an earthquake, that would be the highest recorded earthquake that we have. And then the pain of a disclosure is rated, and again, this is by the partners, as a 7.7. 7.7 on a Richter scale is a pretty large earthquake, and if you're not prepared for it, things are going to be crumbling. But the thing I do like that APSATS did with that particular survey is that they ask about the wait time, that prolonged wait time between discovery and disclosure. Like, what's the pain of that wait? And the pain of that wait was 9.2, much higher than the actual disclosure itself. And I think sometimes when unless people are barking, pain doesn't always get noticed. Sometimes there's the quiet pain, the resignation, the despair, the constant kind of fear of the uncertainty that doesn't always roar, but it's there nonetheless. Dan, do you want to talk about the survey around disclosure itself, the ratings on that?
I don't remember the exact numbers, but in terms of the benefits and risks, or how.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I was surprised by, 'cause on the disclosing person side versus the partner side, we asked about the benefits of the disclosure. Was it harm? Is it the second part?
Yeah.
Did it help? Did it benefit me? Did it harm me? I forgot what the second one was. And did the benefits outweigh the harms? I think was the third.
The big important one that was left off some of the APSAT surveys that I thought was important was, did the benefits outweigh the harms?
And I think I don't remember the numbers, but if I remember right, I believe it was on the addict side, the disclosing person's side, that they said they reported even higher than the partners that the benefits outweighed the harms. So, which is surprising. Like, I would have expected partners, but we found even more benefits for the addict doing it, which makes sense. I mean, I think on some level, that kind of existential threat of sharing all this stuff was so scary and so overwhelming, but then actually having done it in a way, really gone through the whole process to try to give their partner exactly what the partner needed and deserved. And then also, I think, realizing, there's this phrase, I'm only as sick as my secrets, and realizing, oh, wow, I don't have any secrets from the person I love the most in my life, who I've harmed the most. So there's actually a lot of benefit to doing that. Obviously, then we have a lot more work after disclosure. Disclosure, we always say, is a incredible starting point. We build a new foundation, but the building is not built yet. We have to do a lot of healing and repair after disclosure, but it's so critical to build a solid foundation in a relationship back.
You just mentioned, Dan, that it's the benefits are great on the sex addict side, not so much, or not that there's no benefit.
Not so much. No, there's no.
It's less on the partner's end.
Both of them did say benefits outweigh the
No,
harms.
they're slightly higher on the disclosure side, but it doesn't mean that they're not high. I mean, we're talking, I think at the time we did the book, there were only 3 studies that we could find, or 3 including our survey. And collectively, all 3 said that over 90% of all participants said it was the right thing to do.
Okay, to clarify.
Thank you. That's good to clarify. You don't want to think it's helpful for the addicts and not for the partners, of course.
Exactly.
Well, the partners, I really like the way we did that question, making sure to ask that, Dan, because the partners talked about a lot of pain. Like 7.7 earthquake is, particularly if you're not really prepared, is a lot of pain. But, still, when asked the question, did the benefits outweigh the harms? It was, for the most part, yes, they did. Which says a lot. And I really like that, we didn't have a lot of research to look at when we put the books out. I do know, Dan, we both know that there's some people in the disclosure guide community are actually now sitting in grad schools doing research on disclosure. So there's more and more that's going to come out about the process.
And you mentioned a little earlier, Janice, about the effects of the wait period.
Mm-hmm.
How long is the wait period? I know different clinicians think different ways.
It's a big controversial one, actually.
So, yeah.
So when I've said this before, but it still continues. It's just a phrase that haunts me. Because I was actually the person on the original APSATs survey, which I think went out in like 2014, who was sort of monitoring that. And I remember one person's write-in, which was 40 years and still waiting. So we had a lot of that, people waiting a lifetime. I think that's one thing that I've seen really change in the last few years, is things are speeding up. Sometimes maybe way too rapid without enough prep, like in my mind. But we're still talking now. I would say we're talking months to years to never. And it's an interesting thing, because I'm in an area where there are a lot of CSATs, there are a lot of APSATs, certified partner specialists. There are a lot of people now doing disclosures. They weren't when I sort of started this field, but we have but to go to our surveys, Dan, to see that the percentage is still a minority. Even though it feels like it's so much more, it's still a minority of people getting a disclosure.
I was going to say, Monifa, like, that's a really good question. It's tough because, and it's a range. I think every couple's going to be different. And oftentimes, I don't know what you both have found, but we generally can't do disclosure soon enough for the betrayed partner, and we
Yeah.
can't wait long enough for the betrayer. The more time I have
Mhm.
on the addict side, the more I can help them with insight into their own behaviors. I can help them understand the full impact of what they've done and the harms that they've done. Help them understand betrayal trauma, help them work through shame resolution, all those kinds of things, as well as get a clear document
Mhm.
that they're out of the fog of the addiction and they're in recovery. So there's a lot of things about benefits of waiting. And I actually think, like what Janice is saying, I think the traditional approach had been waiting. A year maybe? I'm not sure how long people had to wait initially, but it was a while.
Oh, it's
Um,
much longer than a year.
Longer than that. So you can imagine though. So if we know the wait time, the distressing wait time for a partner of
Yeah.
that pain is a 9.2, I mean, that just feels excruciating to wait year plus. I think, like Janice said, I think we've shifted to doing them quicker, but it's a range. I think there's a lot of, unfortunately, I think for anyone trying to navigate this, it's really worth figuring out with your disclosure guide or guides what their process is, because not everybody's on the same page with this. And sometimes you may be working with someone and you're on the same page, but then your significant other is working with someone else with a completely different approach.
Yeah.
And that's where things get really messy and jumbled up.
Yeah. And that's why I said that sometimes a little too soon, in my opinion. And it's if I've got a really serious cancer, I'm going to do some research to find the best oncologist. I want to act fast, but I also want to act. I want it to be sure footing, and there are a lot of people out there doing disclosures who have very little training, and there are people who have training who have very little experience. And if you're really early in recovery and doing this, you don't know how to vet this. You don't know enough, to ask the questions or the discerning things. And then once you sort of invested, if you figure it out along the way, oh, this isn't the person I should have chosen to guide me. Then you can feel, most people I think feel kind of like stuck, like I put money and time in this, and I so desperately, we've got a date, we've got a ring and a date, and I don't want to do anything to mess that up. But I think that the community could use some really good consumer information about how to choose who you're going to
Yeah.
work with.
And there's nothing wrong with switching if you want to get the surgery done properly.
Yeah.
Um, and Dan, you just gave like kind of a tall order of if you have more time, like, betrayal trauma, giving them knowledge on that, coming to a place where they can be honest. Are all those things necessary? Like, does the partner have to wait for all those things to be in place before we can do a disclosure? Because I'm at 9.2 over here, and this is it might take him a long time, depending on his own, cognitive distortions and such, to get to that place.
I think the short answer is no. I mean, they don't, but that's informed consent. Our process, we really try to give as much choice back to the partner. So if, for example, I'm working with the addict and the partner's saying, I need this yesterday and I need to get the clarity on what I'm dealing with so I can heal and start to move forward. And I realize that the addict doesn't have much insight. They may have some narcissistic tendencies, or they may, they really don't understand betrayal trauma. They're pretty early on. That's behavioral truth. That's what I would want to share to the partner's guide. If the partner has a disclosure guide, I want to make it clear to them this is where they're at,
Mm-hmm.
with full informed consent. Are you willing to move forward? What's more important? Is it that you have this insightful, connected, empathetic partner? Obviously, anyone would want that. Of course. Let's just own that. Of course, you'd want that. But what's the most significant thing right now? Is it having the facts and information so that I can, have informed choice of what my next steps are? Or is it finding out, having that person have those pieces right now in this moment? So I don't think there's a right answer, but you will often hear, especially on the partner side, they'll hear from the disclosing person, the disclosures guide saying, oh, he's not ready. He's not ready.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes they'll even say she's not ready. I don't know why that happens. A lot of times you'll have the person who's preparing the addict or the disclosing person, and they'll say, oh, your partner's not ready. They're they're volatile, they're intense. So, which is a whole other thing we can talk about. I think that's why is that happening coming from the disclosing person side. But I think that's why we try to give as much. The workbooks we created weren't to say this is the one template, this is the one thing you have to do. It was literally, here's all the choice points along the way. How do we want to navigate these as a couple so that you can get the best experience that you're wanting and needing from this?
Yeah, the speed up, but the speed up based on more information and more discernment, not less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if I'm a partner and I'm waiting and I'm at 9.2 and I feel like, the addict is learning more things, the more memories are coming up, I feel like I want to hear things as soon as they remember them, I want to know them because I don't want to get surprised when I walk into that disclosure room, which does come up often. What do you say to them? How do they manage this waiting period?
Well, I think you manage the waiting period by the same thing that you do if a storm's coming. You start preparing. And part of the reason I really like disclosures is that earlier in my career, and especially with this, the prep for the disclosure became the carrot for partners to do the very things I've been wanting them to do for themselves, like to stabilize themselves, to do the kind of care with them to strengthen themselves with that. And the way I would handle the questioning is actually there are exercises around wait book, how you, in the workbooks about how you manage that wait time. Most of the partners I work with, when they really, really think about it, their preference is to get it all at once. And to get it in a formal, like, ceremony of the exchange of truth, because getting it at midnight, when they're triggered about something and they're having to, it's coming out of, a tail end of an argument, just feels like you get the information, but you also get all the damage from getting this information the same way you always got the information with that. So most of them, when they're really carefully think about it, choose that that's their preference. And we give some very specific cues that the partner has chosen for how the disclosure to handle that. On occasion, though, it's not frequent, but I have had people know, I want to know it. When that's the case, and we vet that, and then that's okay. So you realize, here's the consequence. You're going to be the one creating the dribble. You're going to be the one who creates the context with more scar tissue. How are we going to handle that? Let's start preparing for that. So if you're going to go with truth, choices also have consequences. So let's prepare. If that's what you choose, then we have to really repair well, because you have to be like a ninja, self-care, trauma kind of person for that.
I like that process that we have with that, Janice. And there's an exercise in both workbooks, staying sane during the wait time, and it's choreographed from the partner. This is the partner saying, like what Janice is, a protocol. Here's how I want these kind of situations to go. I like that better. I think earlier on, when I was first starting to do disclosures, I would have, the disclosing person hold a boundary. I'm not going to share this till disclosure.
Yeah.
Well, that's one option. And I think people do that. What ends up happening, what I've found happen, is the betrayed partner says, well, you're married to me, not Dan, so I need to know this information. And we didn't have a backup plan, right? It was like, and then they're kind of like, and then they freeze. They either double down with the boundary, the partner gets really upset and distressed, or they just share, and it's just really not careful. So I think this way we're trying to, we understand these situations come, we understand the wait time is incredibly upsetting and distressing. And so we want to have a plan as much in place so we can build some containment.
That wraps up episode 1 of our full disclosure series on Hope and Healing Chats. A big thanks to Dan and Janice for their insights. Don't forget to join us on episode 2, where we'll tackle the fears both partners and addicts face as they consider this transformative step. Be sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to stay in the loop for all of our upcoming episodes. Thank you for joining us, and remember to embrace your healing journey. Every step forward brings a new hope for tomorrow. See you next time.